Yeah, so let's all right, let's move on then. Let's talk about it. They finally asked him about this new strategy that other teams are using. And of course, the Rams made it most famous by winning the Super Bowl using that strategy where they trade away a lot of their top end draft picks and then
Mm-hmm.
they also find creative ways to sign and trade for big time star players. Some in the prime of their career, others to in the twilight of their career, and they turned it into a Super Bowl. So they were asked about that, and basically Eric DeCosta, um, he I like that he thought about it. He admitted that the last 3 months he's thought more about that strategy than he had before because of the exact. DK says it well. The F the pick strategy. I think that I like that he at least reevaluated their stance, but was just really it really was reinforced that is ultimately, the draft is the foundation of what they do, is what was his quote was. So they're going to continue to try and accumulate draft picks throughout the draft in the top end, the middle, and even the back end to continue to build a roster that they think is competitive each and every season and doesn't have those peaks and valleys that a lot of other franchises suffer through.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's really what it's about. It's about stability. It's about understanding, what your financial capabilities are. And I think the Ravens feel like it's more likely that they hit on a pick or a multitude of picks than it is that they give up those picks and that player being worth it. Right? Like that's the equation they do in their mind. Like, no,
Yeah.
and I realize that's a simple equation, but at the end of the day, their process is their process. I think it's been proven out time over time over time. I mean, just look at the picks you put on the list from the beginning of the franchise. And it wasn't like, obviously Ozzie Newsome is the wizard, but Eric has been his right hand since forever, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Eric's been running the draft. Obviously, Ozzie has had the last word for a long time, and now Eric does. But Eric has been his main influencer in the draft for an extended period of time. So, he deserves credit for those names as well. So, yeah, there we go. Eric DeCosta, it sounds crazy to say this, but every pick you bring in, you expect to play. You don't draft a guy. Yeah, I remember this. This was interesting. You don't draft a guy if you don't think he can help your team. That's just a bad mentality. Does the data back that up? Probably not, but that's what we expect. And so, yeah, I mean, Eric, that was kind of what he talked about today is how they can improve the amount of guys that they draft and then play and putting them in good situations. And one of the things I thought was telling, Glenn, is he said at some point you got to let the young guys play. Now I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he basically said that in a different form of words. And he said, I think our guys now have a tremendous opportunity. And I think of the wide
Mm-hmm.
receiver class. I think of some of the young guys up front on the interior of the defensive line. I even think of some guys up front on the interior of the offensive line. All these guys have tremendous opportunity in front of them because of the amount of picks that we've had relatively early on in the draft. So it
Mm-hmm.
just speaks to that strategy that the Ravens have.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you touched on it. He said, he was that was when he was really asked about what he's learned over his first few
Yeah.
years as being the final, decision maker, and he talked about he's his own worst critic. So there's certainly things he'd do different, but he's proud of what they've done in his first few years as the final say. And he did mention, that the fact that a player's success, there's a lot of things that go into a player's success. It could be poor evaluation by the team, and they put a guy in a position where he's just not able to succeed because of poor evaluation. It could be just a bunch of guys in front of him where the opportunity isn't there because an excellent and great player is already in his spot. And as good as he is, he's just not good enough to unseat him.
Mm-hmm.
There's salary cap implications. So, but all I heard was, Jimbo, is that it's time for Broderick Washington to step up. It's time for Justin Metabike to step the hell up. It's going to be time for all them damn guards that we drafted
Dude.
to start stepping the hell up, like Ben Powers, like Benjamin Cleveland, like
Any
Tyree
other Ben
Phillips.
you can think of that's in the NFL and plays offensive line?
Like, it's time for these young guys. They've had a couple years to learn their craft, and most of the time in the practice field. But now there's no one in front of them. There's no Brandon Williams here right now. There's no Calais Campbell in the building right now. So those spots are up and for the taking. And so I don't know if that's just them saying that to themselves to make themselves feel better, or if they really believe that this is their time to shine And it's time for these young guys to maybe make a name for themselves instead of living in the shadows of these other guys.
Yeah, no, there's so many things that are coming to a crossroads this year. And he has to hit on this draft, and he's got to be feeling the pressure, the entire front office for sure. It's really going to be hit. Think about Lamar's deal. Think about all the weight on this draft. Think about, like you said, all these young guys coming up that they've invested a lot in draft picks and time. It's a lot coming to a head here that's going to be interesting. So just like you said here, you guys can see what Eric said, and of course I we aspire to do better, and a lot of that falls on me. It's funny because he sounds like a guy that has been leading up a team that's been in the dumps for a while, but since Eric's been here, our record has been ridiculously good. Since he's been here, obviously, but since he's been the GM. So appreciate that he's not comparing himself to his peers, and it sounds like he's really comparing himself to himself.
Well, I mean, look, let's just call it what it is, Jimbo. What they just didn't have the heart to ask him about it or to talk about it. But really what it was is that 1 year, right? He had his first year. If you just look at his 2019 season, his 2019 draft class, you're talking Marquise Brown, Snacks Ferguson, Miles Boykin, Justice Hill, Ben Powers, Iman Marshall, Dalen Mack, and Trace. Just brought up that draft alone, because if you look at the other drafts, there's certainly places and people to be proud of in your draft class. But that first year, I mean, outside of Marquise Brown, duds. And
the hard thing about
Powers is who you're most proud of.
Yeah, and the hard thing about that is, even though Marquise is doing well, he'll always be compared to his peers in that draft class, who some are just absolutely ridiculous, right? So that's the tough part. Even though he's the shiny object based on his production, it's still well, DK Metcalf is a lot better, right? This is what a lot of people will say.
Yeah, among others.
Yeah, exactly. The list is definitely there and substantial.
Don't get nervous because I'm here now.